I want to thank the music team and Gloria and I for reading. This is our second week in our 5-week series on Happier Now, a book by Natalie Kogan. Each week is an independent message, so of course I hope you can make as many as you can, and if not, the wonderful thing about YouTube and Facebook is you can catch up if you'd like to. So this is part 2 of our journey to a happier now, enjoying life's journey. Last week we talked about I'll be happy when, postponing our happiness based upon achievements, and how to be grateful for the ordinary moments. Today we're focusing on letting go of fear, no longer chasing perfection. Hey, I'm guilty of that one. Honoring that it's okay to not be okay, and embracing the joyful and meaningful moments that happen in our lives. Imagine what would happen if you stopped putting your happiness in striving for perfection and allowed yourself to embrace those truly meaningful, joyful moments that occur every day in your life. That's exactly what we're going to be discussing today. But first, our question for the week. What's the one choice that you can make today to put your fears in perspective, to know it's okay to not be okay, and to embrace life's joyful and meaningful moments so as to be happier now? One more time. What is the one choice that you can make today to put your fears in perspective, to know it's okay to not be okay, and to embrace life's joyful and meaningful moments so as to be happier now? You've probably all heard that phrase, if you can't do it right, don't do it at all. For me, right always translated to perfect, and consequently, I chased perfection most of my life. When I was working, if I found a small mistake that I made on a project and there was time before the deadline, I would actually redo the project. And the reprint processes weren't nearly as friendly as they are today. I remember when I was traveling around Ireland with my mom, celebrating her 75th and my 50th birthdays, I told her that the gift of perfection that she had given me was truly a curse. She just laughed. And when I realized it was my stuff, it was my issue. I always saw my mom putting the finishing touches on things so that they looked absolutely perfect. But it wasn't Mama who made me a perfectionist. It was me. So many of us spend our time chasing perfection rather than realizing that most of the time, good enough is more than that. It's actually a gift to ourselves. I'm not advocating that we get sloppy in our life. A friend said last week that striving for excellence is not perfectionism. I like that. Striving for excellence. Striving to do your best is far better than chasing perfection. And for me, it allows for so much more happy in my life, so much more time to enjoy, not spending time redoing things. So finding a little mistake in the publications still might make me have a little bit of discomfort, but now I can let it go most of the time. Our quote for the week of Paulo Coelho is useful when stuck in that pain of something that's not perfect. Tell your heart that the fear of suffering is worse than the suffering itself. The fear of suffering is worse than the suffering itself. Imagine if we looked at all of our fears around chasing perfectionism. I love the exercise that Natalie has in the book around breaking out fears into parts. I'd like to try it with you for a minute, if you're just willing to play along with me. Think of a recent fear that you had. Maybe it was a conversation that you needed to have, but you were a little bit afraid to have that conversation because you thought it might be uncomfortable. Or maybe your boss scheduled a conference with you and you wondered what kind of news was going to come out of that conference. Or it could be as simple as you were cooking for friends and you were a little bit afraid that they might not enjoy the dinner or that it might not be good enough. My big one, people coming into my house and judging me because it's messy. Most people are already aware of what types of fears that they have. Fear of failure, fear of rejection, fear of change, fear of abandonment, fear of public speaking. That's a big one for some people. Fear of losing, fear of the unknown. And ironically, fear of success. A lot of people are afraid of succeeding. But just pick anything. Usually the first thing that popped into your mind is the best one to use for this exercise. The first question about that fear is this: what specifically are you afraid of? For me in my house, it was that they would judge me or they would think less of me as a person because my house was messy. Be as specific as you can on this one. What specifically are you afraid of? Okay, now what judgment are you projecting around your fear? What lack of acceptance is behind that fear? What might you lose? You get the picture there. Okay, now, just for a moment, pretend that your fear is absolutely valid. It is true. And imagine what might happen. What is the worst thing that could happen? And if that thing happened, how would your life change? Is it something you could live with? Could you make it through that storm? I love the Haruki Murakami quote that was in the reading today that Gloria read because it's pertinent to this situation. So I want to repeat it. And once the storm is over, you won't remember how you made it through, how you managed to survive. You won't even be sure whether the storm is really over. But one thing is certain. When you come out of the storm, you won't be the same person who walked in. That's what the storm is all about. I've been through a lot of storms in my life, and frankly, when I think about it, a messy house and how people might judge me around it is more like a little sprinkle of rain, not really a big storm. A storm was moving across the country with 2 small children, moving into a life where I'd be a single parent and no friends or support system set up. And a job that I was hoping I would actually be good at and succeed at. So sometimes it helps to put things in perspective. Would it really matter if somebody didn't like me because my house was messy? Or if they talked behind my back about it? Would that really make a difference? Would it be something I could live with? I suspect that the type of people that I want to hang around with wouldn't do that in the first place. And the fear probably has a bit of helpfulness in it because my fear actually has me having incentive to work on getting things cleaner or more organized. It's not like some fear, like driving too fast, or driving when I'm tired, or fears that keep me safe in some way. That's a whole different type of fear that has a usefulness behind it. We don't put our hands on hot stoves because we know we're going to get burned. So at some level, we're a little bit afraid of putting our hand on a hot stove because we know what it's going to occur from that. Being human, it seems a bit impossible to live entirely fear-free. And yet, we can release the fears that stop us from moving forward in our life or that take away our happiness. Too much fear is like trying to check into your air flight with a bag that is overweight. You have to make a decision. Do you dump something out of your bag and just leave it behind, or do you pay the extra charge? It's a choice. Have you ever considered that you are the one that allows fear to enter into your being? In Course in Miracles, we read this. Fear is a stranger to the ways of love. Identify with fear, and you will be a stranger to yourself. And thus you are unknown to you. And yet, how easy it would be to say, this is my home, here I belong, and will not leave because a madman says I must. Fear is that madman. It has us leave that space in us that feels safe and secure. So what choices are you making around your fears? Last week I said happiness is not a reward earned for achieving something. I think the line this week should be, fear is something that we learn to put into perspective so that it becomes manageable. Once again, fear is something we learn to put into perspective so that it becomes manageable. And there are actually positive benefits to fear. Fear guides our fight or flight responses and helps to keep us safe and alive. Fear actually heightens your senses and your awareness because it keeps you alert. Fear helps us better prepare for things. We just don't want fear to hold us back from doing something positive. And that brings me to the next point. It's okay to not be okay. As you heard in the reading, Eckhart Tolle wrote, what a caterpillar calls the end of the world, we call a butterfly. I love this quote from Ram Dass about caterpillars. It's only when Caterpillarness is done that one becomes a butterfly. That again is part of this paradox. You cannot rip away the Caterpillarness. The whole trip occurs in an unfolding process of which we have no control. Think about that for a moment. You can't rip away Caterpillarness. It's a great philosophy for dealing with those things in our lives that are not the way we want them, and possibly things that we even want to work on changing. Some things just require time for us to move through them. A caterpillar has to go through the time-consuming process to become a butterfly. And by the way, it doesn't happen in seconds. It takes 9 to 14 days. If the caterpillar decided, the heck with this, I'm just going to give up, think of all the beautiful butterflies that wouldn't be part of what we can see in our gardens and see in our lives. One of my favorite parts of this section of Happier Now is the little phrase, miracle equal faith plus patience. Our job is to be patient with ourselves. about who we are, and to have faith that when we do our part and let God do God's part, whatever miracle we're wanting to happen will show up for us. And this does mean being okay with things that are not okay, knowing that eventually it is going to be okay. I'm sure that caterpillar thought, wow, this is a long process. What's going on here? Doing our part requires us to be patient with the day-to-day and to be compassionate with ourselves. When we fail at something or fail to keep a commitment to ourselves that we made about changing something, isn't it true that life is a journey, not a destination? And yet a lot of times we live our lives as though there's a destination right here, right now, and we want to be there. We don't want to be stuck in the traffic of having to get there at whatever pace the traffic allows us to get there. Sometimes things are going to seem to not be okay. And it's then that we need to just let it be okay. Remember to be happy even in those moments. Remember to allow today to be what it is without the need for it to be perfect. Remember that the miracles happen when you have faith and patience. I know I want more miracles in my life, and I know that I haven't always been patient. But you can learn to be a miracle worker. You can learn to have that faith and be patient for things to show up. You know, Jesus told us these things and more we would do. Jesus had faith that God was on his side and he could do whatever he set out to do. So how do we build up that faith? Natalie Kogan has some words around that. Kogan's observation is this: many of us struggle to reach an impossible state of perfect happiness, hoping that one or more achievement or the next important milestone will be the one that delivers the gold. As we hang our hopes of feeling happy somewhere out there in the future, we often rob ourselves of the little moments of connection, enjoyment, and beauty that are already here within our lives. So where are you putting your happiness somewhere out there in the future and robbing yourselves of those moments of contentment and enjoyment and beauty that are right there in your life? I doubt that there's anything such as perfect happiness on this planet. Perhaps for a moment or a day or maybe even longer. But we live in an imperfect world. So again, we're back to that perfectionism. Why are we not striving to enjoy the moments of happiness that pass by us each day? The smiles, the hugs, the laughter, even if it's someone else's laughter that we hear out in the distance. Allow yourself to enjoy those moments. Our lasting happiness comes from a choice we make to be in a state of being happy with our journey. However that journey looks right here and right now. Natalie also shared these words. By relaxing our impossible high expectations of reaching peak happiness, void of challenges or difficult emotions, we give ourselves permission to experience the joy, kindness, meaning, and contentment in the everyday moments of our lives. When we become present to them, we honor them, and in turn, they fill us with many of the same emotions we've been hoping to feel once we reached our happiness goal. What might be some of your impossible high expectations of reaching peak happiness? How might you be able to recognize that being happy does not mean not having challenges in your life? It doesn't mean not experiencing negative emotions. How are you overlooking the joys and the kindness of the day by putting your happiness in the future rather than just honoring the things that are showing up for you today to fill you up with happiness right here and right now? Hey, we all do it. We get hung up in the challenge or hung up in the negative emotion. Let it go. Break away from that. As a matter of fact, Kogan actually suggests that we redefine happiness. The joy is in the doing, in the striving, in the effort, and connecting to our inner strength and a sense of meaning that helps us get through life's small and big storms. Genuine happiness isn't limited to pleasant feelings. It's deeper and more encompassing of our complex and beautiful humanity. Giving up the expectation that we can achieve our way to perfect happiness and broadening our definition of being happier to include not just feeling good, but also working through something difficult is incredibly liberating. We can give ourselves the amazing gift of feeling happier now, where we are and how we are, even when not everything is perfect, which is always. Why not give yourself that gift of being happier now, of embracing those joyful and meaningful moments, recognizing that it's okay to not be okay? So in summary, let's decide this week to stop chasing perfection and enjoy life's journey. Let go of that fear. And when something you fear shows up, remember to examine what specifically it is that you fear and put it in perspective. It's okay to not be okay. You can't rip away the Caterpillarness. We live in a world where things unfold through time. Learn to be patient. Embrace the joyful and the meaningful moments of everyday life. Give yourself the gift of redefining happiness and include where you are, how you are, and even some of those difficulties that you're working your way through. So here's your affirmation for the week. How is it that I so easily and willingly make the choice today to put my fears in perspective, to know it is okay to not be okay, and to embrace life's joyful and meaningful moments so as to be happier now? So your challenge for the week is this. Redefine happiness. Allow it to include the strength that you have to work through those stressful, scary, guilt-ridden, resentful, those moments of loss. And give yourself the gift of being happier right now. A miracle takes place when we combine our faith with patience. So continue to enjoy life's moments and be happier right now. Let's pray. Just taking a deep, nourishing breath. moving into that place within you where you feel safe and secure, that place where you know that still small voice speaks to you when you take the time to listen. And recognizing that all the divine is part of who you are as an individual expression of the divine. So what I know to be the truth is that this week we're putting our mind on the present moment and all the joys and those meaningful moments that happen when we pay attention. We're letting go of perfectionism, letting go of the fear, recognizing that you can't rip away Caterpillarness, and that miracle happens when we combine our faith with the patience for us to do what we need to do and allow God to do what's God's part. So I am grateful. I am so grateful for this philosophy that reminds me that we are all connected and that we are individual expressions of God living on this planet. I am grateful for this opportunity to be in your homes. And it's from all that gratitude that I release my word into the law of mind, spirit, and action. Because I know the truth, that God's already called it good, already said yes to doing whatever God's part is, knowing that you're doing your part. So I can just say amen, let it be, and we can affirm it together. And so it is.